Hey, welcome back to It's 420 Somewhere. Today we're going to talk about New Jersey and how well they did on their first day. So last week was an important week in the history of marijuana, I guess, because New Jersey, well, first of all, it was 420, and the day afterwards, New Jersey opened their retail for marijuana. And the question always when states open the retail is how well the states are doing, how much they can handle the lines and demand for retail marijuana, and like basically we want to see the patterns of this state. And New Jersey turned out to do really, really well, which was expected because we have people coming down from New York because they don't have to worry about the repercussions of bringing weed back into New York because it's legal there. However, retail is not open. So people coming down to New York, down from New York and all over New Jersey, it's a big state, so there's a lot of expectation for high demand. And there were only 13 locations open on the day of the 21st. There are expected to be a bunch more opening throughout the spring, but just 13 for now. And there were, as we expected, long lines in pretty much every dispensary that was open. It felt historical, it felt great. And the amount of money that they made was just about $2 million in the first day. That's great numbers. Just for comparison's sake, in 2014, Colorado, when they opened their first dispensaries, which they opened 11 more, they opened 24 dispensaries on the first day, they made $1 million, which was considered a huge success at the time. This amount in Jersey doubled that, and it helps that it was right around 420. The reason it turns out that they didn't open on 420 was because they were worried that it would create even more demand. So the fact that they had to suppress demand just by making it a day later and still getting almost $2 million on the first day is a great sign for New Jersey. Yeah, so there were over 12,000 customers on the first day. Things are looking good for New Jersey, and people were worried that there's going to be a whole traffic jam of New Yorkers coming down to New Jersey just to buy weed, and that wasn't necessarily the case. There were, of course, people coming down, but when it came to people coming from the city who didn't have cars, it didn't really work out because there weren't any dispensaries open near stations where you could, the path stations are what they're called. There weren't any in Jersey City, there weren't any in Hoboken, but they're expected in the spring. So great job, New Jersey. You had a wonderful first day of sales. Second story we have today is about this problem that we've kind of seen being consistent throughout all of legalization of marijuana, which is candy that has THC within it, and then they're using brands, they're kind of stealing the brand from well-known things like Skittles or M&Ms or double stuffed Stonios is one of them. This has been a thing that's kind of a problem because they look like candy, they look like food snacks that something kids would buy. And so obviously nobody wants these things to go into the hands of kids. And there's a balance here because it's understandable that this stuff would want to target candies and sweet things because the idea of munchies and marijuana go hand in hand. However, munchies and being a kid also go hand in hand. So that's something that is needed to be separated. And these brands, these specific brands like Kellogg and Pepsi and other major brands are trying to get this basically banned from happening. And they're doing this by trying to lobby for legislation that would make not just counterfeit illegal, they would also make it illegal for things that look like they're close to actual brands be illegal. And this would be a big thing for legislation to do this because that would potentially mean opening a whole can of worms for other lawsuits throughout different things beyond marijuana. But basically, Kellogg and Pepsi are trying to get this from not happening in the marijuana industry. You know, when it comes to my beliefs on this, I'm not totally sure. I see their point of view. I also see the idea of keeping this open because you don't want the idea of anything that looks like something else to be up for a lawsuit, because we're seeing that in music right now. We're seeing, you know, something that sounds like something from decades ago now being sued because it's a very popular pop song, and some of them coming through like the Katy Perry lawsuit. I don't know, I guess I'm curious to see where this goes. That's kind of all the weed news. It's New Music Friday, meaning we have a bunch of new releases. Nothing huge, but if you're a fan of electronic music like Fortet, we have a new Kelly Lee Owens album. The album is much darker than her usual stuff. It's almost industrial when the bass is just like dark and grungy, but it's really fun music to put on, and especially when you're kind of working out or when you're in the zone, when you're trying to focus, that like 4/4 beat that's going is pretty fun. Especially with her higher silky voice. It's a good album. It's not her best. I think the last album that she made was probably better, but this one is worth listening to, especially if you're a fan of something like Fortet. And the second album for today, if you're a fan of Phoebe Bridgers, Tomberlin put out a new album, and she has been kind of consistently making this kind of stark folk, indie folk music for a while now. Her voice is kind of whispery and subdued, but this album I think has probably encapsulated her sound best and has some beats behind the music, whereas in the past it was just kind of acoustic guitar and her singing over it. And this album is really wonderful. I'm excited to dive more into it. I think it's beautiful. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's up there with the best Phoebe Bridgers tracks as well. So Tomberlin and Kelly Lee Owens, that's the music for today. And that's all for this week. We'll see you next week with some more stories.